the beautiful woman that I have waiting backstage because she understands all of this very well. So her name is Carly Abrams or Carlithia Abrams. And this beautiful young woman is a scientist turned marketer with a track record of driving innovation, brand growth, and strategic impact for iconic brands such as Scott, Viva, Serenity, Tena, Torque, Food Saver, and Pollination Apothecary, which is her very own company. She has collaborated with Fortune 500 companies, including Newell Brands, Kimberly Clark, Sprouts Farmers Market, Wegmans, Moms, Organic Market, Earth Fare, and she's very passionate about advancing health and wellness equity. She brings systems thinking approach to solving complex, challenging, and creating meaningful market driven solutions. Now, I can tell you that her and I met at what I call my favorite place every Saturday is the farmers market, right? So we go there and we get all of our natural goods, and we met actually at a vegan food stand, and we just struck up a conversation and just realized that we had so many similarities. I would say that we kind of geeked out on speaking about all things natural and holistic when it comes to health and wellness. And then I learned who this beautiful woman was. So I'm going to bring her in. No longer will I delay. I want you to all out there to give her a virtual round of applause. Here is Carly Abrams.
Hello. We did geek out, right?
We did. Yes, we did. And even further when we met for tea and coffee, right? We definitely geeked out even further.
Yes.
That's what I love, just meeting beautiful people who are just aware, right? That there are other things out there that can help you to uplift and fulfill your holistic being.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have to give you some accolades here, right? Because you don't find many African American female scientists.
Mm.
So I want to give you your kudos there, you know, your props, everything that you deserve for that feat, because I know that's not an easy journey, right? To
Mm.
become a scientist. So talk a little bit more about, you know, why you decided to study science.
Mm. I have a story. I'm going to share that with you as well. A story from when I had decided to study in engineering
Mhm.
and be a scientist. But this was like, I think I was in middle of high school. I think maybe I was high school. But anyhow, I decided because I really, growing up, I knew that education would be life changing
Mhm.
for me. And I remember at like 3 or 4 years old, looking around my neighborhood and saying, I'm gonna go places. I'm gonna, do differently, and it's gonna be a different environment at that young of an age. And so it just so happened to be that I love science, I love math, I love going to school. I would go to school all year round. I would, being
Wait, you got to halt right there. 'Cause I know that's something that people don't understand. What made you decide to go to school all year?
I just loved it. Really, I mean, you kept your mind agile. I mean, as a little girl, I just loved learning, that curiosity,
Mhm.
and then also I thought, well, it's better to put my energy there, and I see my friends, but I just love learning. I love being curious, and that kept me busy.
Mhm.
And that's where I put my energy, right? And yeah. And so got into, different math, science, and loved it, and loved my different teachers, and just
Mhm.
kept going all the way, winning competitions, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And at some point I remember in high school saying, okay, what am I going to do? Is it going to be law? Is it going to be engineering? What type of engineering? And that was the two things that, I was looking at. What was it? And I decided engineering. And I'm glad I did. It gave me a great foundation.
Mhm.
But I have a story. I have a story for, my grandmother. For
Mhm.
certain years, I was raised by my grandmother, and
Mhm.
I remember one day. I don't know how we got to talking about what I was going to do, but I was like, "Oh, I'm going to do engineering." And she says, "Well, why don't you do something, easier like teaching?" And I remember being so offended in my spirit.
Mhm.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
and I sort of sometimes like to go against the grain. Like if you
Mhm.
think I can, or if it's supposed to be art, or if it's a male dominated,
Mhm.
field, then I'm going to try it.
Mhm.
That was my younger self.
Mhm.
And and so, but now I realize, fast forward years, like, many decades later, it wasn't that she didn't believe that I could do it. It's that when you're in these type of fields, when no one's used to seeing you, it's the idea that it's not for you. You shouldn't be here. It's, you're facing a lot of different energies that people don't talk about on a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things I feel like we should do more of is, as we're pushing more women to be in STEM, also communicate and teach them how to actually have to be in battle, right?
Mhm.
Because you're
Mhm.
gonna be in battle more, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean you have to be and fight a warrior, but you need to have those communication skills and be aware, and other skills of what you're going to do with that energy,
Yeah. Oh, such
and
an
have the
interesting.
processes.
Yeah, such an interesting way to put it. But I like that you said be in battle. I think people oftentimes put a negative connotation on battle, right? Being in battle. But in order to grow, thrive, progress, especially for a woman in a world that is, especially a country, right, that is controlled by men, right? Typically, especially those type of industries, to say be in battle. I love that you said that because it's like, kind of put your armor on um, in order for you to build up enough confidence, willpower, right? Whatever you want to call it, spunk,
Mhm.
and then your intellect, right? In
Mhm.
order to be able to deal with what you're going to face, because you will face some challenges
We'll
in those
face some
industries.
challenges.
Yeah.
Yes. But
Yeah.
still be feminine,
Yeah.
right? Still
Yeah.
be feminine, right? And
Yeah.
striking that balance.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So continue with your story. I just wanted
Oh,
to highlight that.
yes. So, fast forward, it's like, oh, I understand a different way of what she was saying, and yeah, and then also just her own reference of,
Yeah,
what women did in those days, in her days,
yeah.
certain owning professions. So there's truth to some of what she was trying to communicate.
Mhm, mhm.
But yes, I don't regret the foundation. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, yeah. I can remember just thinking about the psychology of the generations before us,
Mm.
right? And they just weren't prepared, right? Our generation is different. We were ready to step out more, right? We were ready to see more. But the psychology of their generations, right? I can remember when I decided to leave corporate
Mm.
and start coaching. And I was approached with, are you still playing with the idea of coaching, is what was said. And, I was an accountant in corporate America doing very well. So I was looked at as if I was crazy, right? And not to no fault of, the family members, right? It was just that's their view of the world, right? That's what they saw, that's what they knew. So it was, you got to go to school, you got to get a good education, and you have to get a job, right? And
Yes.
a respectable job, right? And I'm putting it that way because the things that we went into based on what they were teaching us was things that they thought were respectable,
Mhm.
especially if we went further than the generation before, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm glad that you took that with a grain of salt and decided to branch out and do exactly what you wanted to do based on, what you felt was going to be good for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So talk more about how you carry that forward
Yes,
into
yes. So,
everything that you have, on that wonderful resume that I read there.
well, that foundation has been everything, right?
Mhm.
Problem solving, that's one of the things I like, even when I'm hiring people to work with in my business.
Yeah.
Um, I look at their mindset, how they think about things, and are they innate problem solvers, even if it's in a creative space, like how do they think? And so that's something that having that foundation of a chemical engineering background has instilled in me, and I love it, right? And just the analytical aspects. And so really what I love to do is marry that analytical and that creative and spirit and together, and that's me, right? And so which is unusual for someone who's typically more technical, right? To be able to do both sides and bring it together and translate and etc. So that's something I bring with me even today in Pollination Apothecary, even in formulating all the base original products for the sensitive, right? And when I say sensitive, it's not like, oh, they're so emotional. No, no, no. It's sensitive in that sensitive skin, sensitive system, sensitivities, and really what that really means, right? So in pollination, we're not just, talking about the product on its own, right? But the product is good, the topical, but it's also products that's for the internal. But then there's also the other aspects, the spirit, the soul aspects, the trauma, the so many different aspects. And so this is why we do take a holistic approach. But our base is really using those photochemicals, those plants, and doing it with science and even now technology as well, so that we're not only providing these solutions, but educating, right? So that we know what's the 1, 2, 3s of being sensitive. What does it really mean on a holistic basis, so that now we could put, an end or at least in a remission of like itchy skin, eczema, psoriasis, other health challenges as well, because guess what? It's all connected.
So we're gonna have to get into that, but I want to back up just a little bit, just a little bit, because I know that you have a story. How was pollination born?
Oof. Pollination. Listen. So even as an engineer, as I was traveling the world doing innovative work, and brand work as well, I knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial at some point in my life. I always thought it was when I retired, and so I thought, what would I do? Would I be a bake? Would I create a bakery or a tea shop? Because I love like finding these unique shops, and then I would tell my friends and all that. So pollination started. I had my own health challenges, right? So I started to, when I moved to a certain area, actually, when I moved to Philadelphia, I started to like develop, I didn't know what it was, but I was feeling sick all the time. And I was like, what's going on, And the doctor, finally went to the doctor, oh, you have allergies. Well, I've never had allergies in my life, but now I have them. Interesting. Then I started to develop gut challenges and really significant skin challenges, acne, that sort of thing, and other stuff that was, never diagnosed, and had all these other diagnoses, right? I'm like, what? Now I have this, I have GERD, I have what? I have H. pylori. This is all gut stuff, and what? But then the medications wouldn't work. Right. And then you have these side effects that you're battling on top of never really getting better because, and so over the years, I've had other journeys as well, like most recently with the eczema. I call it my eczema healing journey, where I turned 7 shades darker. I looked like I was, 6 months pregnant, at times, traveling the world. I was feeling like I was being struck by lightning 3 times a day, and so, so I've had my journeys. And so that's how pollination was born. And many solutions have come about from my own journey, but also from others' journeys and needs as well. So the original 3 products of pollination was our Strengthen and Stimulate Hair Butter, our calendula and plantain balm, and our inflame balm. And each of those 3 products do have its own separate story. So check them out on our YouTube channel and pollination.com. But that's how pollination was born. I was like, listen, I'm struggling. I know others are struggling. And so let's do something about it. And I figured out what my own challenges were. And it's like, hey, we need to bring this information, these insights, these approaches to other people. And I figured out with my chemical engineering background of solving what was truly going on with myself. And pollination, I like to talk about how pollinate, that is the base of pollination apothecary, right? So, like every fruit bearing tree, every flower bearing plant, and for it to bloom or to bear that fruit or bear that flower, it needs to be pollinated. This is what pollination is doing, is helping everyone to, bloom and to be pollinated, right? So that their bloom, right, can be just beautiful. It can happen. You don't have to be in a stunted winter all year long. Okay.
That's right.
And then the pollinator, the tribe itself are now pollinators themselves, right? Because you may be helping your child, when they're your children, they may be a caregiver, or just passing on those insights to others.
Yeah. So there's something key that you said too, because I know that I think I shared this with you, that I experienced recently too, where my skin had changed, right? And the dermatologist coined it as eczema, but I had never had eczema before in my life, right? And what I believe, it was a stress response to the wellness journey that my son was going on, and then me going on this journey with him. Just certain things happened, and I recognized how I wasn't taking care of myself even, and how these things started to stem. But I thought it was interesting that you said too, like, oh, I've never had these things before, and now all of a sudden here they are.
Yes.
What do you think attributes to that? I have my own thoughts on that, but I want to know, from your expert opinion, like, what do you think these things stem from?
You know what? There's so many different factors, and I break a lot of this down in my eczema masterclass. It's free. I do offer it in person, like every 2 months, but it's also a download recording of it. But there's so many different factors of why sometimes a wellness journey comes about that you've never had before. And sometimes it is, the food that we're eating, right? It is what we're going through. It is what we have been through that never was really processed and is still in the body. And now in this season, it's time for that to be processed. And then you have a journey that happens: eczema, cancer, whatever, gut problems, skin problems, hair problems, hair loss could be. So, and I feel like oftentimes, I don't know what you think, but my thought is oftentimes we experience it in a way that's going to get our attention. So what gets your attention is going to be different from what gets my attention and what gets someone else's attention. So somebody else, they got to experience it in the form of hair loss, because that's going to get their attention. It's going to be all hands on deck. Well, for me, skin. Okay, I was gonna be hard, like whoa, or other ways. So I think that's what makes our journeys unique. Like, what's going to get our attention?
Yeah. Oh, I love that you said that too. Yeah, I was thinking too exactly what you said in terms of like food, environment, right? Stress levels. Something triggers something in your body, right? That makes that change. It's almost like it's the warning sign, right? To say you need to make changes, and it may not necessarily be just, oh, I'm having a skin issue. No, the changes need to happen somewhere else, because the skin issue is a result of something else that's happening, right? So we have to take, and this is why I love doing this show, because it's a whole living approach. You have to take a whole living approach to your well-being, right? Because it's never just about one thing. It's always usually that something is stemming from something else. It could be, you mentioned earlier, trauma. It could be trauma that got triggered, that you had deep down inside, right? That now got triggered. And I love the way you said it's something that needs to come out, right? And that's usually what happens in our health and wellness. And I think when people start to look at that overall approach, which is why I love what you do in your business, because if you can start to look at that overall approach, then you can truly heal, right? Otherwise, you could have the same problems over and over again, right? Especially if you're saying, I'm taking this pharmaceutical for this, but I don't even know why this thing happened. It
Mhm.
could, it could keep reoccurring
Oh
because
yeah,
you're not
and
getting down to the root of the problem.
absolutely. So then you're on something for the rest of your life. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's something I refuse. I was like, no, I'm not going to be on something for the rest of my life, right? There
yeah,
has to be a more, better plan, right?
yeah.
So yeah, yeah. And don't misunderstand me. Listen, pharmaceuticals have their place, and
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
grateful they exist.
Yeah,
But we have to relook at, what's the whole plan,
hmm,
right? Yeah, what's that long-term plan?
yeah,
Um, so it can be best for your body overall, or
yeah,
you're not experiencing all these different side effects. And those who are more sensitive, you're going to experience more side effects, right?
yeah.
And now you're looking at, is it the right thing or not for me, right?
Hmm.
I'm going to experience more side effects. So that may not be the best solution long term. Short term, maybe get you what you need, right? But long term, those who are more sensitive, they're going to experience it differently.
Yeah.
And this is why pollination exists.
Yeah. So I want you to, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but I want you to, when we come back, to talk about that sensitivity a little more,
Mm.
because I know that can show up in so many different forms. And I
Mhm.
think people probably misunderstand the word a little bit,
Yes.
right? However, I'm pretty sure that 99% of people experience some sensitivity, right? That they probably are not even thinking of. So I want
Mhm.
you to go into that a little bit more in depth. And then I want you to talk a little bit more about, I know you mentioned them, but the pollination products,
Mm.
right? And we're going to talk about how people can get in touch with you too to start to understand these sensitivities that they're having, especially if they need a guide in doing so. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, everybody. Don't go anywhere. Make sure that you stay right here. I guarantee you that there's some sensitivities that you have that you probably were not even thinking of. And then when she starts to explain it to you, you're going to be like, aha. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Imagine a verdant paradise that stands as a convergence of worlds, a living temple of native wilderness, a place where the full potential of inherent human and earth magic can be seen, felt, and understood. A space that attracts the brightest and best of educators on the leading edge. A place of permaculture designed for the benefit of future generations.
All right, and we are back. So we are not going to delay. We're going to bring Carly back in the room here.
You got me checking for little tears.
That's what
Laugh.
happens. This is real life. But before we went to break, everyone, we were talking about some of the sensitivities that your body may experience. And I wanted Carly to jump into what that really means, because there's a lot of things that people deal with that they don't really understand are sensitivities that are triggered by something, right, that's happening in their body or in their life. So
Mhm.
I'm going to give the floor to you. Go into what these sensitivities, are and how they show up in people.
Yes, yes. So sensitivities. So I like the definition of sensitivities because a lot of things don't always show up on medical testing, right? Some of the testing, for example, allergies, right?
Mhm.
And so for my own experience, I used to like say, "Oh, I think what's going on. It's got in this. Can you check me for gluten sensitivity?"
Mhm.
And it'd be like, "Oh, nothing's showing up for gluten sensitivity. You don't have, or you don't have." They didn't say nothing shows up as gluten sensitivity, but it was, "Oh, you don't have celiac." Okay, but
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that I'm not sensitive to that, and it's not creating the challenge that I'm experiencing
Mhm.
in my system, and my gut, and my skin. No wonder why other medicine or things are not going to work.
Mhm.
But my problem solving, I had identified that was one of the root causes. And so again, allergies, right? So allergies, and it can be anything, right? It can be mold, it can be, your laundry detergent, anything. And you can miss it just like that because an allergic reaction, be it anaphylactic or just irritation, and even irritation can be very extreme. It may be a delayed effect. It doesn't always happen within the seconds and the hours. It may be several hours later
Mhm.
when your body is reacting and in that reaction for a long time. So, this is what I mean by sensitivities, right? It doesn't show up on regular allergic reaction scales, but it is a sensitivity for you.
Yeah. And you mentioned something so key there because sometimes the measure, right, when it comes to medical testing, the
Hmm.
measure doesn't go far enough, right?
Yes.
That barometer that they're using does not go up far enough in order to really check for certain things. And I'm learning through this journey that, my son has been on, I'm learning that there are tests that you can have done that your healthcare provider potentially may not cover
Certainly.
that will give you an extension of tests that will check for more of those sensitivities that sometimes you don't find because throughout the time that we've been talking so far you've also mentioned the gut, and what's happening in the gut, which is a big
Right.
part of illness, right, or dis-ease, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
a lot of what's happening in our gut starts to show up in other places and starts to come out in the form of those sensitivities. And the testing that is done GI wise, right, on your gastrointestinal tract does not necessarily pick up all of those sensitivities. You have to do some more extensive testing. And I'm saying this because I want people to recognize that. I want them to, when the doctors are saying, because you heard Carly say here, right? Oftentimes these things don't show up on the regular testing. So when the doctors are saying to you, I don't see anything wrong with you. However, you're saying in your body, I know that something is happening here,
Mhm.
right? You
Yeah.
have to start to do the research and ask for those extensive testing, to
Mhm.
get more details about what's happening in your body.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to mention another thing where these sensitivities show up in a big way is a lot of autoimmune diseases,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
We're seeing that more and more these days that people have autoimmune disease. Can you talk a little bit about, kind of your findings or, what you've seen in that regard? Because some of these things are becoming detrimental, I'm going to say, to
Mhm.
people's health where they could otherwise be managed better,
Yes.
and even
Yes.
cured.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a lot of things what pollination looks at is overall wellness, but in
Mhm.
particular, chronic skin conditions. And the skin is the scalp and it's the skin on the body as well, but also autoimmune. Oh, most autoimmune cases, over 70% are with women.
Mm.
And so that's very interesting, right? And so as I look at autoimmune and even chronic skin conditions, a lot of times things are misdiagnosed. So you may at one point be diagnosed with eczema, but you really didn't have eczema. It was other things. You were having another experience, but that was the only thing that our Western medicine system is trained to say, and so a lot of times you're misdiagnosed, or something you're diagnosed with is actually just a symptom. It's not really what was going on. That's why I feel like a lot of people are diagnosed as autoimmune, because I mean, there's over 25, probably 100 autoimmune diseases when we talk about autoimmune disease. Like even alopecia areata is an autoimmune disease. Crohn's is in that category. IBS, all those things are in that category. And so it's a huge category, and therefore there's a lot of misdiagnoses. It's almost like we don't know really. Sometimes these things we don't know really, but they don't communicate it that way. And so I advise people to go deeper, and this is why I share my journey, because there are so many different aspects. Not only, stress is one thing, but let's say trauma. What are you experiencing on a day in, day out basis? Are you able to? Do you have the right processes in place to help you manage that? That stress, that trauma that you're going through, so that it doesn't traumatize your body and create disease. And to your point earlier, how like once you do have, let's say, a gut challenge, well, once one system is out of balance in the body, other systems will get out of balance. And so now you're diagnosed with GERD, IBS, hypothyroidism. It's just so many things. And I've been diagnosed with so many things. But once you really get to the core of it and put the right processes in place and do the work that you need to do, you'll find, and have the right products, of course, too, you'll find that now hypothyroidism, in my case, it never shows up anymore. So it's very interesting, right? And so I think there's an opportunity. I believe that there's an opportunity, so we can put a lot of things in remission.
And that's interesting too. We have so many similarities. But I remember years ago, I had a doctor who told me that I had hyperthyroidism. And I said, no, I don't, and I refused to take that in that way. Lo and behold, I didn't know years later I was going to get cancer, but all this thing ties together, right? There was something that was happening with me. One, it was some trauma, right? That I had not faced. And then once I dealt with that, then it was the stress of like trying to get that work-life balance down, right? But all of that stuff started to show up physically. But when I changed the things that I consumed, right? And I'm not just talking about food here, right? When I started to look at things, when I changed the way I think and the things that I started to consume, from everything from music to what I read to, this is the big one, how I allowed other people's energy to impact mine, right? That's when these things started to dissipate. Right. And no longer did a doctor ever tell me again that I had hyperthyroidism. However, this was something that was showing up because of things that I wasn't dealing with in my life. And then it started to show up in my body.
And this goes back to sensitive. So I want to talk a little bit more about sensitive. So, right, it could be allergies, right? It can be allergies that are not picked up on the Western medicine scale, certain tests that your, practitioner does. Sensitive means also that you may pick up on the energies around you more so than someone else. Therefore, you're going to be more impacted. So you may be able to walk in a room and you sense what's going on. And you have your own internal lie detector test, essentially. You may be one that if you eat food, then immediately, or you put something on your skin, you immediately start to feel the effects. Or you take a pharmaceutical and you immediately start to feel the effects of what it's doing to your blood, your system overall. You may be one I'm just going to look at my notes here, highly intuitive, even clairvoyant, or some of the clairs. you may, let's talk about music.
Mhm.
You have a song on or the radio on, and a song come on, and it's, rah rah, and like it's a fun beat and everything, but
Mhm.
yet it may then trigger some emotion, and then
Yeah.
automatically you in a certain mood. And so
Mhm.
now, okay, so that's just being sensitive to sound, and right, because that's what music is.
Mhm.
So just getting really in tune with that, and that is men and women. And so some of those aspects are about being sensitive, right? And
Mhm.
then you can, trace certain, issues or challenges that certain families deal with, right?
Mhm.
Because we have certain patterns and mindsets, or we may be going through a certain amount of trauma on a day in, day out basis.
Mhm.
Now, maybe your family has a history of high blood pressure, or maybe it's diabetes, right? Or it could be many different things, but that all is related.
Yeah, yeah. I know you just brought up something too, and people out there might think that I'm crazy, but I can feel when something's going through my body, like it on a much deeper level than the way the words are coming out of my mouth, right? Um, so there's certain things that have happened to me where I'm like, I already know that this is happening,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying this to say, without going too deep on that part of it, but I'm saying this to say to everyone out there, pay attention to your body, because once you start to tap into that, you're going to start to feel things as they happen, so that you can get in front of it versus staying behind everything, right? The point here, why Carly and I are in this world, right, is because we want you to be proactive in your health. This is
Yes.
why pollination is there, for you to get ahead of, right, what you're dealing with, versus having to react to things and then you're stressed out trying to deal with it. You've allowed things to fester in your body even though you felt like something was wrong, right? So pay attention to what's happening in your body. And then once you do that, start to advocate for yourself. Start to do research. The one thing I have to give my son big props on, him dealing with the journey that he's been on and some sensitivities that he's had of late. He researches. He is a researcher, and he does his homework, and then he comes to me and says, I think I need to do this and I think I need to do that. But he's paying attention to his body, and he's doing the research, and he's advocating for himself.
I
um,
love it.
and I want people out there to recognize, right, that that's what they need to do. I
Yes.
think this is why Polly and I we just connected, because when I heard her story and I heard what she was doing for herself, I'm like, wow, like this is what it's all about. This is how you start to live a healthy lifestyle. This is what whole living is all about.
Yes.
So I definitely want to share your website for one, right? Because I want people to go on and be able to get the products from your website. Absolutely. And yeah, if you can show us, that's even better. I want people to go on and get products from your website. So you heard Carly say that she's dealing with and helps you deal with some of the skin issues that you're experiencing around some of the sensitivities that you have. So she has these wonderful products out there, and you can go right to pollinationapothecary.com and you can get your products. So when the doctor tells you that you have eczema, and I'm saying that facetiously because it's something that I was told, and I know that that wasn't really my issue. But it was a result. It was what was happening with my skin as a result of some of the things that I was experiencing.
Yes.
So luckily I was tapped into that, because there was some pharmaceutical medicine that they wanted to give me, that they did prescribe, and I even picked it up, right? Because at that time, this is another story, and Carly, you can identify with this. At that time, I was stressing out so much. I actually thought about taking the medicine, right? And again, we're not against medicine. If you need it, you take it, but you have to know what's best for your body, right? Before you do. But I was even thinking about it. And then I had to take a step back and say, you know that this is not the right way for you. And you know that you have to look in what's actually happening in your body before you start to take medicine that they don't even know what they're prescribing for. Right. So I took a step back, and I ended up not taking the medication, right? And clearing my skin up with holistic practices, right? Not just food, again, not just herbs. It was, get my mindset right. It was doing things like meditation. It was things like that I needed to do to help my body to heal. But I'm saying all of this to say, kind of think about what you're doing before you start going down a road where other people are telling you what's best for your body and you're not really paying as much attention as you should. Right.
Oh,
So this is why, yeah.
oh yes.
Yes. Yes. So this is why Carly is here. I want you all to connect with her. Go to her website for sure. You can reach her through her website or on LinkedIn, because she is also on LinkedIn as Carly Abrams as well. But make sure that you go to her website and purchase her products where you are experiencing things that you need some natural healing for. I also want us to get behind Carly. And I'm going to show you this website as well, entrepreneurofimpact.org. And this is where, and I'm going to let her talk about this journey. Tell us more about that.
Yes, this Entrepreneur of Impact is a way to acknowledge entrepreneurs making a big impact in the community. And Pollination's impact is helping our communities bloom into wellness. We've impacted over 10,000 plus people throughout the United States and abroad, but mostly in the United States. And this also would be a way to help continue to fund and Pollination Apothecary and expansion and different endeavors as we scale up to be able to offer everyone even more. So I'm excited about this. So definitely take a look, definitely support, appreciate it.
And now I wanted to ask too, because I know with some of these you can vote every day, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to show that again, everybody. So get behind this. Make sure that you vote every day. We're going to go on and do that ourselves, right? To make sure that we're accountable here to Carly and that we're doing what we need to do to support this, because what we need more of is natural products, right? What we need more of is a holistic approach to wellness. You heard that video from the 1950s, and not one person said that they were taking pharmaceuticals, right? And sometimes, and because we said here, sometimes pharmaceuticals are necessary, but I would challenge you to marry your pharmaceutical approach with a holistic approach so that you can help your body heal, so that the pharmaceuticals are not something that you need for the long term. That's something that you need temporarily to help you in a moment versus a lifetime. Right. So I want to challenge you to do that. So we're going to go on here and we're going to vote for Carly. And I want to make sure that everybody else out there does as well. You see it there. Get behind real business. This is something that I like to say to people too. Get behind people that are actually out there doing something and making an impact. Often there are these large organizations, right? When you start to look at what they're doing, they're not really helping people, right? And I'm not going to put any names out there, but I'm saying when you see people that have their boots on the ground, that are talking to people, that are out there engaging, that are actually into what their products actually are. This beautiful young lady knows what her products are, right? And knows how they can help you. This is the type of business that you want to get behind, because you want to get behind people that have the boots on the ground, that are concerned about the people and bringing people what they actually need. So I wanted to mention that as well. And I'm going on. So yes, you see me looking at my phone, but I'm going on so that I can vote. And I want everybody else out there.
Aww.
Absolutely. And then that way here, this is going to be saved now. And I see here, they've got Damon John says, who's next? That's right. Carly Abrams is next. That's who's next.
And I would say that if there's a couple products I think they should, I talked about the original three, right? The calendula and plantain balm, the stimulating hair butter, the inflame balm, but I would also say the Holy Grail skin oil. That has been game changing for me, healing my own skin. People love the Cheerio body cream, moisture cream. And, our hair products are phenomenal. Our tonics, our milks, our stylers are phenomenal. So, take a look.
I love it. I love it. So you can't go anywhere after the show. We need to talk about this. But we love you out there, everybody. If you had to give a last word, Carly, What do you want to tell everyone out there?
When you feel your best, you show up differently. And that's what I want for you. I want you to show up differently in your best self in every scenario.
Yeah. I love that. Absolutely love it. All right, you heard it here. So make sure that you tune in with us next week, everyone, on the Whole Living Show. We've got Connected Conversations with my bestie coming up next week. So, got to come back and see what that topic is going to be. Always a little fun when me and the bestie get together and talk about connected conversations. You never know what you're going to get. But we love you, Carly. We thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. Again, everybody, really quickly, PolyNationApothecary.com. You can go there, you can get products, you can connect with her. And you also heard her say that she has an eczema masterclass. So you can also connect with her on that right here on her website. And then get behind her here to vote entrepreneurofimpact.org. And you can vote for her so that she can bring you even more innovation into the marketplace to help you holistically. Take care, everyone. We love you out there. We thank you. And I will see you next week right here on the Whole Living Show at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.